Welcome into Three Questions with Ivan Maisel, as Ivan brings his insight on all things college football to us. Ivan, we're going to talk about the Georgia Bulldogs this week. Don't know if you heard, but they played a pretty good game in Atlanta this past Saturday against Oregon. What were your thoughts on the shellacking they performed week one?
Wow. That was my first thought. They didn't look like a Labor Day weekend team, JD. I thought both sides of the ball, they looked very efficient. Kirby Smart talked Monday about the mistakes they made, and you would expect him to. That's what coaches do. But I was struck by the plays they made against what we thought was a pretty good team. And the game was never in doubt, and they dominated in a way that makes you sit up and take notice.
I was surprised at just how wide the gap was, because I thought, okay, Georgia's probably the better team. No, probably. Georgia is the better team. Are they going to cover that 17-point spread? Ooh, I don't know. Bo Nix, when he ad-libs, 8 new faces on defense for Georgia. Their former DC is on the other sideline as a head coach. But to have it a 46-point win just made me kind of take a step back, like you said, and say, whoa, Georgia is not taking any steps back in terms of what they're doing in 2022. Got some really good quarterback play. Georgia, a team who's typically more physical and they want to run the ball at you, but Stetson Bennett threw for over 300 yards, had a career-high day there. Are people still not giving him his due from a national standpoint, in your opinion?
Well, if they're not paying attention. I mean, and granted, this kind of play Saturday was a star turn by Stetson Bennett, and that's not something we've seen. I mean, we saw it a little bit in the second half against Alabama, especially in the fourth quarter. But this was a guy who looked comfortable, who made plays, made things happen. And again, this is against a coach who knows him. And to throw for a career-high 368 is really something. And to your point about the defense and the newcomers, you got to be pretty good when you put in a freshman, Malachi Starks, and he ends up leading the team in tackles and as a DB and gets a pick in his first college game. That's a lot of talent.
Yeah, they recruit okay down there in Athens, don't they? They don't have any problem getting guys with stars next to the name into the program. But Stetson Bennett just looked super in control, in command. He really looked like a new level of comfortable in that offense. Maybe it has something to do with Oregon. Maybe it's the fact that he's been there for what feels like 27 years now. But all that's to say, if Stetson Bennett plays like that the duration of the season, Georgia should be in pole position for another SEC title. Now, the AP and coaches poll just came out. Alabama is 1, Georgia is 2. Given the small sample size of what week one was, does Georgia potentially pass Bama in your mind for the number 1 spot?
Not yet. I mean, you look at what Alabama did, and granted, I mean, Utah State is not as good as Oregon, but they're a pretty good team. But much like Georgia, the Alabama starters played a midseason type of game. Nick Saban couldn't wait to let everybody know in his press conference Monday that his starters only made 1 penalty, which for an opener is really good. I mean, these guys don't get exhibition games, but the offense looked terrific. We saw Bryce Young take off and run a little bit. His throwing was impeccable by and large, and the defense was the defense. So Alabama, I don't think you can move Georgia ahead of Alabama, because I thought Alabama looked like a number 1 team.
And they have a big game coming up this weekend as well in Austin. If I remember correctly, you're going to be at that game, Ivan. Is that correct?
If I can wake up early enough, yeah.
Well, sunscreen, water, I mean, probably a couple of shirts to sweat through, because it sounds like it's going to be very, very hot in Austin. But Ivan, as always, appreciate you coming on, sharing your insight with us. Folks, if you haven't already, follow Ivan on Twitter, subscribe to the channel. We want you along for the ride. Ivan, we will see you next week. Enjoy the game in Austin. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also, be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.